may I invite the another stalwart and key speaker, a special guest, Professor V.K. Malhotra. V.K. Malhotra is a member secretary, Indian Council for Social Sciences Research, ICSSR, New Delhi. Professor Malhotra is a professor of economics and has served Teachers University, Meerut as a professor as well as head of departments of economics. He is on the board of Indian Council of World Affairs and the visitors nominee to the court of Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, and also member of the board of many renowned social science research institutes of India. And again, he is another great stalwart and good human being and a great researcher. And under his leadership, ICSSR has done a tremendous work to improve the quality of research in higher education sector. I am sure Professor Malhotra will throw some light and insights on that, and which is going to be useful for each one of us. Now, without taking much time, may I request Professor V.K. Malhotra, Member Secretary, ICSSR New Delhi, for his special address as a special guest.
Thank you, Professor Matri. So, my thanks also go to the other panelists in this session. So, my job, in fact, in any panel discussion, one whosoever speaks in the end is definitely blessed in a way that he has to speak far lesser, because most of the issues they stand almost discussed. But I'm very, very happy that some of the issues that have been underlined by Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, he was largely speaking about different dimensions of NEP 2020 and trying to highlight how this draft came and what emerged to be or emerged out to be an outcome of that draft. Finally, how spectrums are going to operate and how, in particular, is professional education or technical education is expected to take shape under new education policy. I'm very, very happy to see that Professor Agarwal, despite being a professor of computer science himself, concentrated on two major dimensions. Was ethics, and I know any person whosoever happens to be quite experienced talks about the fundamental things more than talking about the catchy or sometimes contemporary things. I'm also very, very delighted that Mr. Akram was always chasing me, in fact, and I was involved in a lot of movement, and I was not able all the times to respond to his calls also. And but finally, I could make it possible to be among you and to benefit from the discussion in this session. Of course, time given to each speaker is so little, in fact, that one cannot share one's experience that one would like to share in an informal way. And this is how we learn the art of saying many things in few sentences also. I'll concentrate on few things, in fact. One is, since Professor Matri, he placed good words about me more out of friendship than an objective assessor of the situation that I could do something at ICSSR. But yes, there are few things that we have tried to take up, in fact. And I see a visible change in India's position on certain parameters. One is that we all know that in science and technology publications, today India ranks at number 3 in the world after China and US. And I can derive little pleasure in saying that when I joined way back in 2016, India's ranking in social science publications as per Scopus statistics was 12th. And now, as on date, it is 8th at the international level. And I remember in social science, as per Scopus statistics, again, we were publishing 10,500 or 10,700 papers each year. Now India is publishing 27,500 papers. That's the statistic for the last year. That's one thing. What I'm trying to say is that Professor Matri introduced me and said that I happen to be a student of economics. So I would try to make use of these figures in my analysis on the research impact that India has made, the research impact that India can make in future also, and especially in the light of the new education policy. So what I'm trying to say is that despite, and Professor Matri, honestly speaking, I feel that virtually despite spending less on research and innovation, we have been spending almost 0.7%, very precisely 0.69% of our GDP on research and innovation thus far. Though we intend to make it 2%, and we all understand this 2% cannot be achieved in 1 or 2 years, it will be achieved in 5 to 7 years' time, or maybe 8 years' time. My worry is not exactly spending more. My worry is definitely ensuring whatever you do with precious resources, with relatively scarce than the needed resources, what better can you do, and how productively you can definitely conduct researches in your country. So the idea is that, of course, we can derive pleasure in saying that our growth rate in publications in science and technology has been far better than the international growth rate. And I can very happily share with you, last year, the growth rate in social science publications was more than 25 to 30%. So that's a huge statistics before us. If I look in terms of the averages, last 4 to 5 years average growth rate of publications in social science has been greater than 20. Right. So, and another interesting dimension that I observe is that especially in social science, that since Professor Matri also introduced me like that, the vast field has been opened. I remember there used to be few and very little number of areas on which social science research was concentrating. But now we have vast array of subjects on which social science research in the country is taking place. And very importantly, I always felt that there is hardly uh, any, let's say, good collaboration, good partnership between policymakers and the academicians. I remember in 2018, we introduced IMPRESS, which stood for Impactful Policy Research in Social Science. And I had the opportunity of drafting that. It was accepted by the government. And today it is the largest scheme of the government of India in terms of social science research. And the kind of success that it achieved. I remember we were discussing it in the ministry, and we had an idea that against our first call, if we could have even 800 or 900 applications, we would be very pleased, because finally we have to award 350, 360 proposals. But we could achieve more than 2,500 applications against the first call itself. It shows that how much people are interested in taking researches in new areas, provided you open up those areas, give them an indication that these could be the areas, and this is where research could go. So what I'm trying to say as a student of economics is that research in any country, including India, especially an emerging country like India, has to be both demand and supply oriented. That's one thing which is very, very important, because I do feel that if your uh, coverage under research is very narrow, it is too concentrated, it is too outdated, and if it is beating about the bushes only, and it is going on the beaten tracks, the research cannot move on the enlightened path which will show the light for tomorrow. And this is what is being, or what has been rightly articulated. And Professor Agarwal was very correctly making a mention about the new policy when it talks about not only spending more, but also making policy, making research more impactful. And I tried to look at the meaning of impact also, and interpretations of that impact. Publication is one such impact, but policy reflection, and more than policy reflection, I would like to definitely lay emphasis on policy evaluation, scheme evaluation, program evaluation, and very robust, if preferred, then third party assessment and evaluation of the things on very robust grounds. So that is what can ensure very productive engagement with the research. Another issue that I would like to highlight is that this country has been talking about the resources, resource crunch, but we all know that when pandemic is over, we are expecting to have more than 1 lakh crore budget dedicated to the cause of education in the country. That's one thing. Secondly, we are also expecting that we would have around 20,000 crore towards research and innovation also on an annual basis. Now, that being the scenario, I think I said it that when we assess India and India's productivity of researches, it is definitely far better than if we look at the outcome of the research on a per lakh or per 10 lakh basis, our outcomes are much better than the outcomes of the West. Now, this has to be understood and this has to be upscaled from the point where we are right now. There are a few questions in mind. One is that, and I'm very, very sure that new National Research Foundation will be addressing these issues that I'm going to underline now. I said that many countries in the world, especially those are heavily engaged in researches and innovations, they have very robust and objective systems of assessment also and evaluation of what is going on. And they definitely very objectively comment on that. Now, if we have such a system in place in our case also, I'm very, very sure the quality of research and the impact of research in India's case will be improved. Number two, there has to be much stronger relationship between academicians in this country and the policymakers. Because academicians and policy making has been happening in this country for long on two different ends, I think. Uh, and for that to happen, in fact, academics, they need to play their role also in a much better way than they have been playing. They have to straight away take up those issues which are of high significance both at national and also at international levels. There are a number of issues we have been talking about. But when we look at the real impact in policy and what is happening, we do not feel all that satisfied. For example, climate change is one such issue. Conversion to solar energy system is another issue. Big data analysis could be another issue. Uh, I mean, since Professor Sahasrabudhe was also there, uh, we all understand that we have lot many technologically skilled people there in our own country and also having a good share at the international level. But when it comes to conversing researches or research papers into patent registrations, on how many occasions and in what ratio are we successful? And that is very, very important for the country. I think these are two different ends that need to be brought together. What I'm trying to finally say is that not only our rankings, not only our share, not only our growth rate, but convergence among various dimensions of being productive, being impactful is very, very much required. Uh, I would appreciate what Professor K.K. Agarwal was making a mention about when he laid emphasis on ethics and fundamental things. If we are very strong in fundamentals and on ethics also, because research in India has been, I know from my ICSSR's experience that when every report that we receive is sent for the plagiarism check, in how many cases we have to send that report back to get it improved so that it remains within acceptable limits of the similarity. So These are very vital issues, in fact. And what I would propose is that, uh, since there is a lot of discussion, and Professor Agarwal very rightly made a mention about GER also, our focus apart from GER would happen on its own. But if our researchers become more productive, and they become productive at an early stage, because we talk to the industrialist when an outcome is already arrived at, we must talk to the industrialist when a new project is to be taken up. I think we must involve all stakeholders at a very early stage. When a boy is doing graduation, or a girl is doing graduation or post graduation, or is going for the MPhil or PhD, at that stage itself, I think all this consultation, what is important, how should they be going, what can be different models, because here time is far lesser than I would take to explain. I know how from several consultations uh, with the industry may improve the quality of research, and may also give its benefit to the industrialists, both in terms of the manpower, skills, and maybe upgradation at the international level for cost cutting or for uh, technology optimization. Another interesting point that I would like to make is that skills are being talked about these days. But I think we need to assess skills at a rest of 2 to 3 years in the country, because the way technology is changing every now and then, right? So maybe after 2 years or 3 years, the skills expected for the highly technology intensive jobs will not be the same. And if you go through the writings of the several Nobel laureates who have commented on the situation of unemployment even in the developed economies, they are coming out with this finding that since in their cases also the technological change is taking place at a very high pace, and the skill sets are not changing at that high pace, and that is why there is a certain degree of unemployment caused by the difference between the skill set required and the skill set available, and the time lag which would definitely take that much time in preparing the manpower having the skill sets which are required. But again, it's a question of prediction for the future, which may not be such an easy task to handle. So finally, I propose that if we have to improve our quality of research in the country, we have to be highly productive, objective, very robust in our evaluation and assessment, and we have to be object oriented in a more disciplined and organized manner. And for that, we must definitely, and I'm very happy to notice that even computer scientists and this entire draft of new education policy talks about having human beings, quality human beings who can go beyond their disciplines. And they must definitely not only know their disciplines, but they should know art, they should also know society, they should also know ethics, and they must finally contribute towards society and the nation building, because because we have lived in silos for several years, and still I notice in different spectrums of knowledge creation, the people are not still appreciating to the fullest possible extent that how interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity has to be promoted to deal with the same problems and find solutions to the same problem. And I'm very, very sure the kind of collaborations at that Indian Council of Social Science Research, we could do it over last 5 years, the kind of partnerships that we could build, the kind of research engagements that we could have with the important agencies of the world, everybody can do that. So this idea needs to be replicated. So we have to build more partnerships, more collaboration, and we have to work on more interdisciplinary basis, because learning is always from each other. We cannot believe that I know and with me and with my discipline ends the whole world. It is much definitely beyond than we could imagine. So this could be a good idea that we can start learning from each other and build better partnership based on objective learning, objective contribution, and objective assessments. Thank you very much. I'm thankful to both the host institutions, namely Policy Times and Shiv Nadar University. I'm also thankful to Professor Matri, who in fact was talking to me always on behalf of the organizers. And Akram, if I have bothered you quite a lot on being there on this day with you, I'm sorry for that, but finally it could happen. I'm very, very happy about that. Thank you very much.